Okay. Okay. Do you have a notification that says Yuri's recording the call?
I just saw that pop up. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, here it goes. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. On this episode, we return and focus on the subject of Haiti. So it's our All Things Haiti edition, All Things Latin America edition, our Make Me Wanna Holler series about the Black diaspora, and of course, we're most likely going to be talking about we're definitely going to be talking about Canada's involvement in all of this. So it's another one of our All Things Canada episode. And joining today is a new guest, Travis Ross, who is a Canadian teacher based in Montreal, Quebec. He is the co-editor of the superb, and I mean superb website, the Canada-Haiti Information Project, and he's written for all sorts of Canadian and American left-wing publications such as Haiti Liberte, which is also a must-go-to place to be informed on Haitian affairs past and present. And you can find great articles of his at Black Agenda Report, Rabble.ca, and Truth Out. And let's get into it. But firstly, Travis, thank you so much for being my guest. And apologies also for several delays before getting you onto the program.
No problem. No problem. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise, it's an honor to have you here. And yeah, let's get into it. My first question I wanted to ask you is what is the current state of affairs in Haiti right now? Because I think the second to last time I covered Haiti was with Yves Engler. And on the program, we talked about Jovenel Moise's murder. Many think that this was an inside job by someone within the neo-Duvalist party that he was part of that got the blessing from the U.S., Canada, France, and other, imperial mafia godfathers from the West. Since then, there's been reports in the corporate media and Western state media on Haiti that the country is gripped and is crippled by gang violence and organized crime that has de facto become the state. And of course, when a tiny country like Haiti, or even a huge African country, is crippled by degenerate drug lords and whatnot, we need to have the West lead a UN-led intervention to clean the bums out. So what's your response to this? And feel free to do much-needed myth-busting on the current coverage of Haitian affairs.
Yeah, I can give you a broad outline because I'm reading the French and English press, but I'm not able to understand Creole. So when it comes to information in Creole and depending on other people to kind of give me a translation. But very broadly, right now, the U.S. is pushing for some form of intervention. Not just the U.S., along with the UN and at this point, CARICOM as well. And right now, they've kind of narrowed down from being what they called a special military intervention to assisting the PNH, or the Haitian National Police. We have Henri in power, unelected de facto, and it would be appropriate at this point to call him a dictator. And we have a Haitian political class that is fractured and just unable to get organized and create a common front to essentially to take him down. So there is a coalition that's considered kind of the main rival to Henri. It's called the Montana Group, or the Montana Accord. Mm-hmm. When they first came out, or when the Montana Accord was first announced and published, they really did truly represent like a broad consensus and a broad coalition of well over 600 groups. But since then, this is about a year and a half since the original announcement, the coalition is fractured, fallen apart, and we have new coalitions forming, none of whom are able to garner the amount of support needed to really take on Henri, who is at this point, and always has been, a representative of the imperial powers of the United States and the core group.
Yeah, and what do you make of the idea? Before we talk about the complicity of Latin American heads of state, surprisingly complicity of Latin American heads of states, Caribbean heads of states that tend to be left leaning. What's your response to even to even the idea that a country which does have a problem with gang violence and organized crime, that it needs a broad international military intervention? Because, Italy, there was a period in I think the late 80s and early 90s where Italy was gripped by organized crime, and there were so many functions of the state which basically, organized crime had completely taken over, and there was lots of, car bombs, judges being assassinated, lawyers being assassinated, journalists who were covering all of this were being murdered, and then there was a very brief period where a lot of those, figures, lots of those organized crime, folks were put in jail, only to be replaced by another, class of criminals. In Naples, they're notoriously known as the Camorra and stuff like that. And I've never once, heard, at the United Nations or international bodies saying, what we should do in order to deal with this organized crime problem of Italy, let's put all of our military forces together and let's intervene in Italy. Let's overthrow whatever corrupt Italian head of state is complicit in any of this. So I'm curious, your thoughts on that when when people talk about Haiti or when corporate state media, whether it's the CBC or the French corporate state press, when they're covering Haitian affairs. I'm curious, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unravel there. Like, Haiti's in the state it's in now because of foreign intervention. So you could start around the coup against Aristide, which led to an occupation under the UN, headed largely by Brazil. And then under the election of the PHTK, Martelly, leading up to Moise, and then finally Ariel Henry. They're all through elections. There were sham elections where like roughly a fifth to a quarter of the population participated. It's intervention that got Haiti to where it is right now. So more intervention won't fix the problem. Furthermore, Henry, him being in power in the first place as an unelected de facto leader, is largely the cause of the increase in, I suppose we could say, the increase in gangs in the first place. There's a professor named Paul Macomb who is worth checking out. He had a great interview with This Is Revolution podcast about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And awesome. Yeah, he breaks down the gangs into about three categories, which I felt was really helpful to understand what was going on, because there are gangs that have kind of grown up, or that have grown to power in a more kind of traditional sense, in the sense of as the state weakens and withers, strong men pop up, they start organizing their neighborhoods, and they function as gangs. In fact, some of these leaders are actually from the United States. They're Haitians who've been deported, who went through the prison system and then deported back to Haiti, and brought with them that kind of gang culture, which I was unaware of until hearing him talk about it in detail. Wow. It's worth mentioning, but I mean, what should be emphasized really is that many of the gangs and this new gang federation called GPEP essentially function as tools of the oligarchs. So they are working for the powerful in Haiti. As to what exactly their goals are, I wouldn't know. Like it's part of the past 30 years in Haiti. You often see gangs, and you see oligarchs going to hire gangs to a certain end to go do something for them. They'll pay them off and so on. But this rise in power of an army of gangs, and it's worth emphasizing the oligarchs who are funding them. That is the main problem there. And I don't really know what their main goals are, in terms of they already have a dictator in power. He is compliant to their demands. They've crippled the capital. Port-au-Prince is not functioning. So, and the United States is basically trying to intervene militarily in order to help consolidate that power. So I'm not clear on what their motivation is to continue to escalate the chaos in Port-au-Prince. There are gangs elsewhere in Haiti, but this is largely a problem of the capital itself.
But important to emphasize, as you mentioned, that if there is a problem with gang violence and organized crime, that is because, of constant, you can call it decades-long intervention, but centuries-long intervention of European powers, led by France, the United States, and Canada, constantly undermining democracy, and that the roots of all of this really goes back to the overthrow of Jean-Bertrand Aristide the second time, 2004, led by the U.S., France, and Canada, followed by the UN, the UN mission, which you mentioned, which Brazil was a part of, which essentially committed a politicide. They literally eradicated all of most, if not all, of the supporters of Aristide, Fanmi Lavalas.
Lavalas,
I'm out the name. Yeah, but basically Aristide's political party and his political movement. But before we talk about, of course, the UN mission, but that's basically why we have, why Haiti has this problem with, gang violence and stuff like that, is because of basically the West, overthrowing democracy, eradicating popular democratic forces, which leaves, which gives rise to these gangs, but as you mentioned, these gangs can only get by with the blessing of rival oligarchs and whoever the U.S. and its allies, Canada and its allies, are giving its blessings to, right?
Absolutely. Haiti is better understood as a neo-colony of the United States. There's brief flickers of democracy around Aristide. You're right to point that out, but it was occupied by the United States for roughly 20 years, starting in 1915, one dictator after another installed, and then there was a popular revolution that leads to Aristide taking power, and he's immediately taken out in a coup, right, in the early 90s, and then again, as you point out, in 2004. So, it's the other thing that one other point I want to come back to, is one of the most controversial points, kind of in North America right now, around Haiti, which we can get to in more detail later, which is there is arguably a third category around these gangs, which is, it's argued by many, I think the numbers are growing, that a third category would better be called vigilance brigades, but possibly you could call them neighborhood defense groups and so on, around the controversial figure Jimmy Cherizier.
Okay.
So that's the idea that he is not so much a gangster working for oligarchs, but actually somebody who's leading some sort of movement, or at least organized a bunch of vigilance brigades and managed to turn some gangs into vigilance brigades and kind of close off a part of the city to the gangs led by or financed by the oligarchs, is something worth pursuing and worth looking into in more detail, I think, than many do on the left here in North America.
Interesting. And explain to our audience the reason why, explain to our audience the reason why so much injustice gets inflicted on Haiti. Why so much lack of global solidarity from left-wing folk or broader anti-imperialist movements. And the reason why I ask this is because it's bizarre that you have so many left-wing governments in the region of Latin America, the Caribbean, and even Francophone African states have all past and present supported imperialism in Haiti, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had the answer to that question, I would tell you, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's certainly something that I've seen Dr. Jemima Pierre take on and try to explore, but just like her, I'm not totally clear on why Haiti is exceptionalized to the degree that it is. So you mentioned, we both mentioned that Brazil led the MINUSTA, the UN force in Haiti, to help consolidate the dictatorship after the 2004 coup. A more realistic look at the Lula government is they're left-leaning, maybe a little social democratic, but they're still a capitalist government, right? Mm-hmm. But if we were to look more at a government that we might be considered more authentically socialist, like Evo Morales in Bolivia, we find that they too supported Minister. Now they may not have like provided soldiers. To my knowledge, it was engineers, but it doesn't really matter. They supported the idea of sending an occupying army to consolidate a coup against the democratically elected leader. So Haiti is routinely exceptionalized. I think the fact that that Haiti like functionally is a neo-colony is a relevant factor there, meaning it's understood to be under the control of the United States. And internal politics matter there too. The political class cannot get their act together. They had an active role in the coup against Aristide. And the coup itself managed to, as you mentioned, wiped out. It didn't just take out Aristide as president and then deport him or exile him into the Central African Republic.
Yeah.
It resulted in thousands of politicians being murdered and thousands upon thousands of supporters being murdered or terrorized. So while there is still a Lavalas movement, it's not what it was in the past. This is actually, I think, key to understanding what's happening among Haiti solidarity activists in North America right now and how they're responding to things, to events in Haiti, and to why there is a lot of discord. There's a split, I would say, amongst Haiti solidarity activists or people who are just involved and pay attention to Haiti right now. And I think the role of Lavalas and how it evolved from, being a truly, you could call it a revolutionary cause, but Jean-Bertrand Aristide was a reformist. He wasn't a revolutionary. Just the conditions of Haiti at the time and now are so terrible that by contrast, you could frame him as a revolutionary, but he just wanted to do things like raise the minimum wage to something where people could survive and start, opening schools and building sanitation and so on. Like, this is not, he's not Hugo Chavez. He's definitely not Fidel Castro. He was a reformist, but he stepped too far. He between wanting to raise the minimum wage, which would have increased the cost for the various corporations that use use Haitians for cheap labor, and him bringing up trying to get the debt paid back by France. That was it. He crossed the line. He had to be taken out. But if we understand this as like the United States not invading another country necessarily, they certainly are violating Haiti's sovereignty. But the way they look at it is this is their neo-colony, and they're just going to manage it as best they can. I don't know why it's exceptionalized to this degree amongst other Caribbean leaders, but the best arguments I've heard are that essentially the other Caribbean and, sorry, not just Caribbean, but Latin American, the CELAC regions, are trying to leverage things in favor of their own national self-interest.
In other words, in other words, an Evo Morales, a Lula, a Rafael Correa, the Kirchners of Argentina, if they make this Faustian pact with the United States and Canada and France, in the European Union, that's okay, we'll allow you to, bully, bully Haiti. And hey, you guys are doing this under the United Nations, so it's not entirely illegal. So it's not, it is illegal, but it's not entirely illegal, because I love how, Canadians, they love to hide behind their imperialism by saying, we don't do warmongering, we do a hell of a lot of peacekeeping, and we do a good job at it too. Like, is that like... So is that
exactly?
So is that how the Evo Morales of the world, the Lulas, the Delmas, the Christina Kirchners of the world, is that how they would kind of rationalize why they are either actively complicit, sending United Nations military, their own United Nations military troops in Haiti, or just verbally, showing diplomatic support to the ongoing brutal subjugation of Haiti?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of material rewards there are for a nation or a nation states when you participate in a UN mission. I don't know if it meant just some sort of pride in the fact that Brazil was leading this mission, or if there is some kind of kickback essentially through the UN system. I really don't know. And take the case of Bolivia. There's really not a lot of research on it. I've looked and looked, and I couldn't find anything. What the material benefits would have been for the Bolivian states or for Evo Morales. I feel like another factor is that people don't really know what's happening inside Haiti, period. Like there are a lot of barriers to understanding what's happening in the country that I experience like on a weekly basis trying to figure out myself.
Okay.
One obvious one is language. So like, the vast majority of Haitians speak Creole, but the people who are speaking on their behalf are speaking in French and English, So you're already getting, in terms of people who can even communicate out to the rest of the world and can get the attention of the mainstream media, we're talking about people who are already among the small middle class and the elite. Furthermore, a lot of these people who are speaking on behalf of Haitians themselves are often bankrolled by the United States, whether it's through the NED or USAID or some other foundation like Open Society. So their interests are already tweaked towards the United States, but their financing is often kind of left out of the conversation. But like I said, if I had a clear answer, I would tell you I struggle with this too. I think it's more interesting right now to watch China right now, and China for many years renewed MINUSTA, then helped and renewed MINUJUST, the various UN missions into Haiti. And so for many Haiti solidarity activists, China is just written off right away as just like another imperialist force, or at least another country that's not going to in any way support democracy, sovereignty, and in Haiti. But now that we really have had this shift to a multipolar world, and China is really more involved in global affairs, my read on it is that the Communist Party, the Chinese government, don't really understand what's happening in Haiti. And how I measure that is that so I don't know if you read my most recent article for Black Agenda Report. I kind of made the argument that the two most successful acts of international solidarity can be credited to the Black Alliance for Peace and to Haiti Liberte. Because essentially what they did was, rather than organize a protest or a demonstration on an embassy, not to belittle groups that do that, but they immediately went to the consulates for Chinese government and the Russian government. And they found people who were willing to listen. And what happens? They blocked the Security Council. They blocked efforts to put a special military force, some kind. The framing changes, but essentially they blocked an occupation through the UN of Haiti, and that's significant. In the case of the Black Alliance for Peace, they went to both the Chinese government and the Russian government. In the case of Haiti Liberte, they directed their attention towards the Mexican government and also the Russian government. And in that case, I ended up with Kim Ives being invited to go speak at the UN, which resulted in the ambassador from Russia at the UN Security Council speaking out. Sort of the way he framed it was, there was an obvious understanding of what Haiti's history was, the United States and the core group's interference in the country, and my read on in both cases, both in Russia and China, was like they really had no idea what exactly was happening in Haiti. They accept the same kind of mainstream framing that Haiti is essentially a basket case, and it vacillates between being worthy of charity or not worthy of charity. That's the essential kind of racist framing you get in Western media for Haiti. Yeah. And they essentially accepted that because they've got their own language barriers coming, whether it's Mandarin or Russian, straight through to the English and French media who speak on behalf of a population that's largely speaking in Creole. So once two organizations intervened and spoke up on their behalf and delivered letters to these embassies or consulates, they listened, and there was a very material consequence. They stopped the invasion. So that's led to the UN and Guterres tripping over himself, trying to find a way to occupy Haiti without any legal framework to do so. So the UN, the United States, are trying to push Canada to lead this force and possibly just lead, but then staff it with soldiers from various countries from Africa and the Caribbean and Latin America, but no one wants to do it because in part they understand that it'd be totally illegal. Earlier you mentioned like the legality and how Canada likes things to be legal in quotation marks because obviously it wasn't just, but the 2004 occupation was justified under the responsibility to protect. That was technically law. And MINUSTA and MINUJUST was under, I believe, Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Right now, there is no part of the charter that allows for Canada to just wrangle up soldiers from a bunch of countries and go invade and take over Haiti. It would just be a straightforward invasion. It wouldn't matter that Henri was asking. It wouldn't even matter if a elected leader was asking, but Henri is understood by everybody to not be elected and to be very unpopular, to be kind of like diminishing. He's hated and reviled by virtually everybody, and the only reason he's in power is because the political class can't get themselves organized and create a common front to take him out. So
fascinating.
Yeah, it's worth emphasizing because further actions in the future by organizations who can whip together the supports and write a letter and really go and lobby these governments and take advantage of the fact that we are now in a multipolar world with two governments who are willing to use their veto at the Security Council is meaningful and actually gets results. That
is something. I wasn't expecting you saying that, but that is something that I think many people power organizations should actually explore, in the future. And I myself actually, have been contemplating, contacting a Chinese ambassador in Belgium or a Russian ambassador in Belgium just to just to actually get their point of views, ask them whatever tough questions that need to be asked about such and such a thing when it comes to either, Taiwan or the Ukraine invasion, but actually talk to them like that because as you mentioned, the power of propaganda and the power of, the NGOs who were horrifically, complicit in undermining Haitian democracy and so forth. Sometimes I say to myself that I can't be too angry at people when they're heavily propagated by corporate state media, Western state media, and then if they don't even follow either of those, but they're left leaning, but they choose to keep themselves informed by reading whatever Oxfam is saying, whatever Human Rights Watch is saying, whatever Amnesty International is saying, then then sometimes you almost can't be too angry that people are so wildly misinformed on just Haiti alone, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the website I co-edit used to be called the Canada-Haiti Action Network, and it was a collective decision. Roger Annis was part of our group at the time to change the name because there hadn't been active solidarity network in Canada for a very long time. The site was misrepresenting its purpose. But we decided to call it the Canada-Haiti Information Project because it is like an ongoing project where we're trying to do our best to understand what's happening in the country. So it's a constant effort. And I still wouldn't claim to have to know everything about what's going on in Haiti, even with being able to speak to Ralph, who is able to who speaks Creole and is able to understand Creole radio and news and so on. So I'm totally sympathetic with that. Yeah, I agree. And when it comes, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When it comes to the various like CELAC leaders, and CELAC is the organization that includes Latin America and CARICOM. There are some leaders who seem to understand what's going on in Haiti. I'd credit like Cuba and to a degree Honduras, where I think are open to the idea that they need to take other tacks, and then possibly St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is like a tiny nation. But the kind of rhetoric the leader uses leads me to believe that he has understanding of Haiti's history and the situation it's in. As much as I was promoting the idea of going to Russia or China's embassies and lobbying them because they have this vote in the Security Council and because we're in a multipolar world, China in particular, they they focus on sovereignty, on national sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Understandably. That becomes really tricky around Haiti because right now the recognized leader of Haiti is Henry. He's a dictator. So when CELAC had their meeting recently, he was invited as the representative of Haiti. When CARICOM had their biannual leaders meeting, he was invited there. So it's not just that the United States and core group countries are recognizing him as a leader. It's kind of unanimous across the board. So what, in the case of CARICOM, what they tried to do was, 2-3 weeks after, a delegation was sent in, led by the president of Jamaica, to meet with the various civil society and political leaders. But he was there for literally one day. So, how much could he possibly accomplish? He basically sat and just consumed one statement after another from various political parties and some civil society groups, and went back. This is a leader who is more than happy to help man and help organize a special military intervention in Haiti. So I don't know how much it matters they even did that. So with Henry being the kind of recognized leader and there being no alternative, we can kind of, Haiti solidarity activists can kind of leverage their power at the UN and possibly at other international bodies or regional bodies. But until there's a big shakeup in Haiti and there's a new leader who can be recognized as the true leader of Haiti, there will be no kind of intervention on the part of these other countries. They can't, because they would be totally hypocritical. They're saying political sovereignty is important. It's kind of what they emphasize whenever they go to the UN, not human rights, but political sovereignty. So they can't then turn around and say, except for in this case, somebody take out Henry, we're going to recognize the leader of the Montana group or the leader of some other coalition. They can't do that.
And folks should read your 3-part article in Haiti Liberte called "How the U.S. and Canada Are Wooing Latin America and the Caribbean to front for their plan to invade Haiti." And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here was I was on Twitter, and I saw the brilliant Latin American journalist Camila Escalante of Kawasaki News, Press TV's Latin America correspondent, and the new host of the Canada Files interview series. And I think she still is associated with Telesur. I'm not so sure anymore, but she was tweeting something about Lula, Nicaragua, if memory serves me well. And I saw Rania Khalek of Breakthrough News and the Unauthorized Disclosure and the Rania Khalek Show. She was tweeting something about a press conference she was attending with Zoe Alexander of People's Dispatch in Mexico that AMLO was giving. And I just responded to both of their tweets, denouncing Lula's support for imperialism in Haiti, and that, hey, if you get the chance to ask AMLO something, tell him, not to support imperialism in Haiti or something like that. Then Miss Calente, she got in touch with me in a private message. So I probably shouldn't be revealing the conversation because it was private, but it was nothing bad or anything. But she was challenging what I was saying, and she was asking me to give specific evidence or a statement that I have of Lula or AMLO supporting imperialism in Haiti. And at the moment, I didn't have the necessary links I needed, but I said to her, well, I forwarded her your work, your 3-part article, Jemima Pierre's many articles on Black Agenda Report and Black Alliance for Peace. She is Haitian American. And both of the articles were focusing on recent years, specifically the role of Brazil and other supposedly left-leaning heads of state in the entire region in Africa who have been complicit in brutal Western meddling in Haitian affairs. But Ms. Calente said that it was only during the very dark period following the 2004 coup that one can strongly condemn Brazil under Lula and whomever else of being supportive of the UN mission in Haiti. But she was saying to me that she hasn't seen any evidence recently of Lula or AMLO supportive of another Western intervention in Haiti. So I wanted your response on that because I think your 3-part article more or less explained that. But we also don't even have to look at recent history. We also know that the history of Haiti is the history of the region of Latin America and other Caribbean heads of states often throwing Haiti under the bus. Simon Bolivar, famous liberator of Latin America, for some reason had an imperial blind spot on Haiti and threw Haiti under the bus. The Dominican Republic, who you would think should be the best friends of Haiti, often throwing Haiti under the bus. So anyways, your article explains that. So talk a bit about the article and your response to Camila Escalante saying that not recently does she see any evidence of Lula or AMLO being supportive of a coup in Haiti.
I'm also a fan of her work. So, I can't argue her point that there's no recent evidence. She's right, there isn't. There's just historical precedents to be worried about what's going to happen in the near future, essentially. Brazil didn't just kind of lead or staff MINUSTA. They were heavily involved, and MINUSTA committed untold numbers of human rights violations, which I'm not going to go into now, but I think that one of the quotes I threw into the article was from a Brazilian general saying they seem to want us to kill as many Haitians as possible, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. So even the soldiers who were sent in were kind of astonished with the level of violence they're expected to implement, and that didn't change Lula's policy. He didn't withdraw soldiers, So if we also look at his actions in the past, he was fundamental to BRICS. He was seen to be part of a helping form CELAC, and on and on. He had this role on the left while simultaneously was exceptionalizing Haiti. Okay, and following into that, it's a general pattern of exceptionalizing Haiti. So, to Camilla's point, yes, there's no evidence, but there's also no evidence to say that he isn't going to do the exact same thing again. And I don't think he has much of an interest in Haiti. There's a general issue, not just with politicians, but with the media and so on, in terms of even paying any attention to Haiti, period. So as someone who is always paying attention to it, and I'm now in year 10, watching how left media has been treating Haiti around, global events around the war in Ukraine and so on has been interesting, because you'll essentially see, brilliant people who I have a lot of respect for and who I watch regularly, sort of putting Haiti on the back burner because they need to pay more attention to what's happening in Ukraine, for example, or pay more attention to the escalation in China. And this isn't really a criticism, because they're very important issues that people should be paying attention to it. And if you're part of this small collection of journalists, writers, speakers on the left, then it's understandable that you're going to put your attention there, because we're possibly leading up to a nuclear war when it comes to Ukraine, and they're escalating towards an actual war over Taiwan with China. So I'm not being critical, but nonetheless, that means people aren't paying any real attention to Haiti, and it means Haiti gets one at every 100th episode on any said show. A good example of this would have been, I saw Aaron Mate and I think it was with Katie Halper, so I think it was probably on the Useful Idiot show, but I'd have to look it up to give you a specific reference. Anyway, they did a recent episode on Haiti, and the framing of the whole thing was very friendly. I think, were they talking to Jemima Pierre? It doesn't matter, because I'm not going to talk about the content. It was the way Aaron Mate framed it, which was admitting right away, we're so busy focusing on all these other issues, the security state of the United States, the war in Ukraine and so on, that we don't have any time for Haiti. So we're really glad to get to it now. And when the interview was finished, the subtext was clearly, and we will not talk about Haiti again for a very long time, because now we have to go back to all these other issues. So when there's people who are doing their absolute best to try to cover the world,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious given Aaron's background. Before he became the rock star we know him from Democracy Now!, later Vice, Real News Network, and Gray Zone. That was one of the first issues he used to cut his teeth into. It was Palestine solidarity and Haitian solidarity. Both him, Eve Engler, Jay Watson, so forth. So Anywho, so that's
I want to be crystal clear though. That's not a criticism of Aramate. Like, I'm a huge fan, and I respect him a lot, and I understand why the attention is kind of diverted. But the consequence is that there's really very few people paying any attention at all, and that allows for occasionally people to speak on Haiti who really aren't paying any attention to what's happening. They're kind of repeating old tropes, and really not a lot of work to build solidarity with Haitians in Haiti. You know, it's a lot of work on the side of the diaspora, but it results in tiny little actions of 10, 20, maybe 30 people protesting in front of embassies and so on. So that's again why I was emphasizing the taking advantage of the multipolar world and like lobbying governments on behalf of organizations, because the energy does not seem to be there right now for Haiti solidarity, whether it's among the diaspora or amongst the left generally in North America. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but again, understandably distracted, because all the attention I put into Haiti, you know, I'm putting much less attention into what's happening in Ukraine, for example. Where any outside this, I would be paying more attention because it is so important.
But talk a bit more then about your 3-part article about how again, you know, and you know, this isn't, you know, this isn't, you know, the U.S., Canada, and France lobbying a Bolsonaro regime. This is, you know, this is them really, really, you know, lobbying left-leaning heads of states. Many of them who they've been involved in undermining their democracy, overthrowing them, and so forth. and of course, you know, the U.S. and you know the U.S., Canada, and its allies continue to tolerate, you know, their corporations doing you know, dodgy stuff and undermining the sovereignty of all of the nations they're operating in, especially if it's ones that have elected left-leaning heads of state. So talk how in your 3-part article, because this kind of does answer the question of folks who are saying, well, what's the specific evidence that you have that such and such a lefty is going to be complicit in a possible you know, Western-led intervention. So talk a bit more about that.
I mean, the main evidence that they will be complicit is that they were complicit. In the case of we look at CARICOM specifically. CARICOM is more of an economic organization, and like I said, you have the exception of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but for the most part, some of the bigger islands in the Caribbean, they're more than happy. They're very complicit with U.S. imperialism. Canada has a massive, compared to usual size of a Canadian military base in Jamaica, and there are many other countries who are more than willing to kind of sell Haiti out in order to benefit their own economy and their own, and like help shore up their own power. So there's no solidarity amongst other leaders in the Caribbean, like absolutely not. In fact, like I said, Jamaica's leader, Andrew Holness, is like he's enthusiastic for a military intervention in Haiti. His only problem is he doesn't have enough soldiers to staff the intervention. In the case of CELAC, I don't know where I should start. There was a problem with the reporting on the CELAC events in the first place. Like, people were understandably enthusiastic about Lula being reelected. I understand that, especially considering who his predecessor was. Exactly. But I get it. Yeah. And is it going to benefit Brazilians? Absolutely. And in the context of a multipolar world, and you know, BRICS gaining more power and so on, like, I see that as all positive. But CELAC, who they passed what was called the Buenos Aires Declaration, and there wasn't a lot of coverage of this. And to be fair, People Dispatch did an article on this. They missed it. They missed the part in Haiti, which was the declaration encouraged all the members to study the proposal from Guterres, the UN, on Haiti. Not going into a lot of detail of what the proposal was. So, you know, and Guterres' proposal is essentially that you have two options. One is special military intervention. The other one is supporting the Haiti National Police, which, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, is just intervention by another name.
Yeah.
So you can't quite call that an outright endorsement, but certainly they're not condemning it either. They're encouraging the members to study it, as in read up on it. And it's a kind of subtle or implicit accepting the framework of Guterres' the UN and Guterres' offer, which is one way or the other, we're sending people with guns into Haiti. It's just how exactly do you want to word it? The back and forth from the political class in Haiti and from some of the leaders all over the world, honestly, at this point, is that no one's going to accept the framing of a special military intervention. It's going to come in the form of support for the PNH. But of course, what does that actually mean? You know? So on that front, you could certainly say there's sort of an implicit accepting of imperialist intervention in Haiti on the part of CELAC leaders, because as far as I know, no one pushed back on that, except for, again, the leader of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And one important detail about, what's his name again? Ralph Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Is as a leader of St. Vincent, which I think has a population in the hundreds of thousands, like it's not, they don't have a lot of push, but he currently right now is actually the head of CELAC. So they have kind of a rotating chair every year. Another leader of a nation state member takes over. So because he's the leader of CELAC right now, he actually does have some authority. And I think it's worth pointing out that the first place he went to after getting that position was straight to Venezuela to speak with Nicolas Maduro, who wasn't able to attend because he, at least according to him, had reason to believe there was going to be a attack on his delegation from right-wing forces in Brazil. So that is kind of a little ray of hope. But for the most part, you can certainly generalize and say the vast majority of CELAC leaders are accepting this framework of some sort of intervention in Haiti.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
One more detail worth pointing out is just that when it comes to the supporting the PNH, that can sound innocuous. It can sound like it's not a big deal, like we're just going to send in a few advisors. But Pamela White, the ex-ambassador from the United States to Haiti, basically explains, I don't think she meant to, but said, basically what we need to do is we need to put aside this, like, talk about intervention. No one's going to accept it. We need to support the police. And we need to do it by sending in just a couple hundred soldiers at a time, but kind of a regular flow under the radar. So there's no kind of big media event of like big planes coming in and soldiers like being like pouring off the planes. We just need to do it in like little tiny doses until essentially we have an intervention force there. And then you can put one Haitian, member of the PNH at the front and say it's like it's Haitian led, and the entire force is staffed by soldiers and police from different countries, all of whom don't speak Creole, probably don't even speak French, and will run into, are more than likely to start committing massacres that the same kind of massacres that MINUSTA did when they were in power, when they were occupying Haiti.
That's a perfect segue to talk about the core group. Talk about the core group, which as far as I'm concerned, is still alive and well. And Brazil was a member of it, and any other current Latin American governments, which are headed by, leftists that are part of the core group, which is another reason why, you would say to other leftists and other journalists, these should be red flags for you, and you should, if you are going to be covering Haitian affairs, confront such and such an ambassador, such and such a head of state, such and such a politician about why they are being part of this, imperialist, club, which has inflicted nothing but misery on Haiti.
Yeah, we probably both watched the CFPI's the discussion on the core group. I think Jemima, Pierre, and Jean Seville were there, so that's worth checking out for kind of like an in-depth explanation of what the core group is, because I can give something kind of in a nutshell version. I mean, essentially, it's what's referred to as the international community. When they say the international community supports this or that, it's just a collection of organizations and countries that support the United States' imperialist policy in Haiti. Like it's not more complicated than that. We're talking about the OAS, which Organization of American States, which is basically the U.S.'s attempt to go in and control politics in Latin America. The UN is in there, along with a collection of like Western powers, but essentially they just sign off on whatever U.S. policy is in Haiti. The thing worth remarking on them, I think, is that often the media, and the mainstream media, they'll almost do like a quotation mark thing, like, oh, the core group, like there's some sort of delusion on the part of the left or some kind of writer who's decided to call them the core group, but they actually do call themselves the core group. That is the title they've given themselves.
Yeah.
It's what the UN will refer to in some statements, like in the infamous statement of Henri was essentially brought to power through a tweet, and the tweet was by the UN mentioning that the core group, by the way, the core group supports Henri now, so he's now in charge, and that's how he came into power after Moise was assassinated. So Canada has a role in that, but I think more so now than the past, Canada just kind of signs off on whatever the policy is. So the core group shouldn't be ignored, but there's nothing I can point out in the past several years where they've done something that hasn't just been to fall in line exactly with whatever American policy is on Haiti.
And, my second to last question is, do the heads of state of whatever part of the spectrum they're on in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and whether they whether they really are that dumb and naive to think, hey, it's okay if I throw Haiti to these vultures, these piranhas, these foxes and wolves guarding the hen and rabbit's house. It's just a small, poor French-speaking and Creole-speaking country. And even though they are the victims of everything we struggle for, sovereignty, the right to breed, self-determination, and freedom of exploitation and whatnot, if we just throw them under the bus to the U.S., France, the EU, NATO, Brits, and the Five Eyes Alliance, they'll eventually they will spare us and let us live. I wanted your response on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair framing. I think when it comes to, it's understanding there's really no leadership in Haiti right now who is viable, not just to take Henri's place, because that would just, there are options in terms of other actors who are willing to do the imperialist bidding in Haiti, but it goes back again to the 2004 coup, and this is kind of connecting something I brought up earlier, which I think is something that has to be emphasized, which was the vast majority of the kind of networks or old networks of Haiti solidarity activists, many of whom have got on to academia or other causes. Some have stuck to Haiti, but there's many who moved on to other causes that they were kind of they came into Haiti solidarity around the 2004 coup. And, they had a lot of successes, but it has to be understood that the coup was successful.
Mm-hmm.
Aristide was taken out. Thousands upon thousands of elected Lavalas leaders were murdered, and a lot of supporters were murdered too. So my personal view is that this fact hasn't quite been accepted by a lot of people on the left in North America, that consequently Lavalas is not what it used to be. So it can cause a certain amount of cognitive dissonance when you find out what Lavalas is now, which is no longer the party of Aristide, amongst Haiti solidarity activists. I know I've gone through a lot of that too, where you kind of equate Lavalas with democracy, because they could be equated for a long period of time. Aristide, for all his faults, really, he was genuine, he's authentic, he has the trust of the Haitian people, and if he were to run tomorrow for office, he would win. There's no doubt. But that doesn't matter. Aristide is out of politics. He's running his university. He's happy. He kind of gives tacit, sometimes vocal support for what remains of Lavalas, but not just the results of the coup and the violence against Lavalas and the coordinated violence done through various NGOs and human rights groups. but then through the election of the PHTK, which led to Lavalas fracturing into smaller pieces. So you have Moise Jean Charles and his party, Petit Salin. You have UNIT. Like there's easily half a dozen parties I could list that, initially came from Fanmi Lavalas. So the Lavalas of today is not what it was in the past, and I don't think it can be any longer equated with democracy. So it's very much become. I'm not part of the crowd who thinks that it was just easily dismissed as a bourgeois party, but certainly can be now. They're led by, wealthy people who are part of the bourgeoisie. There is a base Lavalas, which means there is like they do have a base amongst the poor majority, but it's much smaller than it used to be. And there's a lot of corruption among some of the people who've been elected under the Lavalas banner and some of the people who are currently acting under the Lavalas banner. So it'd be incorrect to kind of carry that history around 2004 to today and just say, you know what, if Lavalas just had more support or had more power, or if they just took power, we'd be fine. They range from being a party that is just so dysfunctional that they end up causing actual damage to Haitian society, to most of the time just being completely inept. Like they have virtually no role other than like producing letters and statements and so on. The statements are vague. There's no action. There's very few actual demonstrations that are led by Lavalas, like huge demonstrations. You could point to other political parties that are actually able to leverage and get people out in the streets. Lavalas isn't one of them. And so recognizing that sort of in Haiti, people are perfectly aware of this, but outside of North America, I don't think people really recognize that what was Lavalas is no longer exists.
But isn't that a sign of just how successful Western imperialism has been in eradicating? I mean, there is still a left movement, but eradicating a very powerful left movement. And when you have that, and that kind of when you have that, and then when you also have again, I often underestimate the power of propaganda and so forth. So when you have that plus a Western corporate media, state media, from the CBC to Radio Canada to the Quebec corporate state media outlets, the French, we really cannot underestimate the French corporate state media outlets, that plus the corrupt, insincere NGOs, then the semi-NGO world, then the American corporate state press, from, the worst of, ABC, CBS to, PBS. Does a lot of their coverage, however small or little, play just a huge role in making people, even those who should know much better, into consenting and giving their blessing to imperialism in Haiti.
Absolutely, yeah. My comments about Lavalas were kind of directed more at like the Haiti solidarity movements. When it comes to call them like normies, then the propaganda is very effective. I was actually just speaking to a colleague not too long ago, and mentioned some of the work I do, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Haiti." He's like, "I don't know much about Haiti, but I do know Jean-Bertrand Aristide is like a terrible dictator." I was like,
yeah, exactly.
a person who it was like it was a short conversation. There was no kind of vitriol behind it. The person wasn't passionate about it. There wasn't sort of like I'm certain about this, but they had been fed that story over and over again. And if you ask them what's something I know about Haiti, I know that Jean-Bertrand Aristide is like a brutal dictator. So that propaganda works very, very well. Yeah, absolutely. I would say in contrast, though, when part of what's happening in terms of like kind of some of the inertia in the Haiti solidarity movement in North America is that problem around Lavalas. There's a lot of nostalgia for what Lavalas used to be. A lot of people who maybe aren't following Haiti as carefully as they were in the past, and are kind of don't see the big picture in the United States, because there is certainly a big, how to put this carefully, there's a significant and sometimes vitriolic debate right now over the role of this guy Jimmy Cherizier, and who he actually is, whether he's a gangster, a revolutionary, or something in between. And for me, this reflects, what I was talking about in regards to Lavalas, and maybe not really having understanding what's happening on the ground, and also only going to sources that sort of have this nostalgia for Lavalas, and not accepting what kind of party they are now, and the fact that they're largely insignificant on the ground in Haiti.
That kind and what you were saying, it sort of reminds me of a couple of talks, online events when Pascal Jean Sonville was part of, and he was calling out Dan Cohen of Gray Zone and Minpress News, and Kim Eves of Haiti Liberté. Because he was calling them out, saying that their coverage of this one gang lord in Haiti as some kind of revolutionary leader. He was saying that no, the guy is just no, this guy whose name I'm completely blanking out is a gangster, probably has the support of the West, and therefore folks really should not be lionizing this, and so that's so what you were saying, it kind of goes back to that there is this huge information drain, and that even exists amongst the best of people who cover people who cover Haiti.
Yeah, they've certainly got into a couple of spats over Twitter, and the last one worth remarking is that Dan Cohen, in his last article on Haiti, uncovered a bot farm. There's you can read about it. I probably posted it on Canada-Haiti, but you can find it on his uncaptured.com or Uncaptured Media. And he uncovered a bot farm that was surrounding the, I'm not going to remember the name right now, but the weapons manufacturer that is promising but is not yet delivered on these armored vehicles that Canada has organized the transfer to Haiti. I'm just calling it organized the transfer because the Haitian government is actually paying for these things. The Canadian government didn't pay for it. They just arranged the transfer, and the company itself actually hasn't managed to produce all the armored vehicles that it promised. But the company itself was getting a lot of flack online, and so they decided to push back by organizing a bot farm and getting some fake accounts on Twitter to then go and criticize people like Dan Cohen. And it was really interesting because it's not I don't know social media that well, and but it didn't seem to take him a lot of time. He went to websites where you can buy pictures of people to use in your advertisements, and found the people who were supposedly these young Haitians speaking out against him, and noticed that they had liked only or following only two or three sources, and one of them was this arms manufacturer, and kind of confirmed it was a bot farm. The same kind of rhetoric that these bots were using was indistinguishable from the kind of rhetoric that Jean Saint-Ville was using against Dan Cohen. So I think that more than anything made me really reflect on that this kind of rhetoric is not helpful. And if you are inadvertently using the same kind of framing as an arms manufacturer who is trying to play defense against someone who's criticizing them, then you maybe need to reflect and kind of open the doors to the dialogue rather than just name calling and trying to silence people who are deeply invested in trying to do their part to help.
But in closing, of course, if Jean Monster was spawned, he's more than free to do that. But it sort of seems as if one big problem when it comes to Haiti is these gang leaders aside. The big problem though with Haiti is imperialism. I think we all definitely need to go back to that, and I just don't see how. And I think until people in Latin America, people in Africa and the Caribbean world, until they kind of get over whatever racist blind spot they have towards Haiti, it just seems to me as if Haiti is always just going to suffer indefinitely. I remember talking to Jemima Pierre, Dr. Pierre, openly on Twitter, and I was saying that wow, all of the, if AMLO is throwing Haiti under the bus, if Lula is going to throw Haiti under the bus again, or any of these, heads of states, and regions, especially those in Africa who know French imperialism and know that the French can't be trusted and know that America can't be trusted. If all of them are throwing Haiti under the bus, it just reminds me so much of the racism, the very unique racism that the Roma, Sinti, traveler people suffer from, in Europe, Britain, and Ireland. It's known as the last acceptable form of, racism. And and even in the United States, we have a very strong Black Lives Matter movement, very strong Latinx Lives Matter movement. Even, despite not advancing, but even a very strong Palestine solidarity movement and an anti-imperialist movement, and whatnot. But then when it comes to, like the plight of Native Americans, like, it's just complete non-existence, like the solidarity that Indigenous Americans and Indigenous Hawaiians and Alaskans, deserve compared to all the other oppressed group. And that kind of reminds me of of both the plight of the Roma people in Europe and Haiti. And I just I'm curious your response on that and how we try to overcome that.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to dismiss the role of racism and why Haiti is in the situation it's in relations to the imperialist powers. It's certainly a factor, and it's like you can see it's like a glaring factor when you see around the issues of migration. So, with their welcoming in migrants or refugees from other countries, but when they're Haitian, they're immediately deported or whipped or just like forcibly removed. Whether it's out of the Dominican Republic or the United States or Canada, it's just kind of universal. So I would definitely wouldn't argue that for a moment. It's certainly a factor. I started writing about Haiti a little bit with Roger Annis. We put out like 2 or 3 articles together when we could, but what really got me kind of going fairly recently, starting last summer, was an article I wrote about what's called the American Global Fragility Act, which kind of puts Haiti into a global geostrategic context. And I think it's important for understanding why exactly Haiti, what the current policies are towards Haiti. So it was recently kind of kickstarted just about 2 weeks ago, where like all of a sudden you're going to start hearing more about the Global Fragility Act. And it's certainly important to understand it is fundamentally a repackaging of imperialist policies towards Haiti. Including Libya and a handful of African nations as well, where the Haiti is being put in the context of a multipolar world, and is essentially the Global Fragility Act is about keeping China and Russia out of Haiti and these other countries. But Haiti is the test case, as it often is for American imperialist policy. So as much as racism certainly plays a role, I mean, Joe Biden is himself extremely racist, and you can find like quotes about him talking about Haiti, which themselves are racist. So it can't be dismissed in terms of like the policy of like the imperialist forces in the United States. It's less so about the fact that they themselves are Haitians or are Black, and it's about keeping China and Russia out, keep them from investing money in Haiti and possibly developing diplomatic relations and so on. So definitely, as you're watching mainstream media reports and so on over the next few months, watch for that term, the Global Fragility Act. It's going to be emphasized more and more. When I first came across it, it was strictly the kind of American think tanks who were talking about it. You couldn't find any mainstream coverage of it, even though it passed with bipartisan support. So you literally have everyone from Donald Trump at the time, who was the president at the time, to Ilhan Omar supporting this Global Fragility Act. There was absolutely no pushback, and it kind of just sat there. It didn't become active policy until recently, and it goes goes hand in hand with what we're talking about trying to find a way to invade Haiti without actually calling it intervention, right? So the Global Fragility Act allows for the United States to partner, I'm going to keep on using the air quotes, to partner with Haiti or these other countries and lock them into 10-year security assistance deals, which basically just means a 10-year occupation. Along with that, I'll mention some comments of like there's a ex-Canadian general, the interviews on Canada-Haiti.ca, but I'm not going to remember the guy's name right now, who was being interviewed about Canada's potential role and so on, because the International Crisis Group and various actors were trying to sell it as like, oh, you're just going to kind of go in and out, just go in, take out a few gang leaders, and you're out again, no problem, just get democracy back on track in Haiti. And this general was saying that's like absolute bullshit. We're talking about nation building, and this is going to be 5, 10, 15, 20-year occupation. We're talking about like another 1915 when the United States goes in and just takes over the entire country. That's what we're headed for. So it may be coded as support for the PNH, it may be coded as like some kind of democracy building activity, the Global Fragility Act, but what they're really aiming for is a minimum 10-year occupation of Haiti.
Wow. And so, and then, to kind of overcome all of this, I think it just sounds to me as if the Haitian Solidarity Network and Haitian-led Solidarity Network just need to step our game, that we just need to step our games up and kind of like, and then sort of, like the example you gave with what BAP, with Black Alliance for Peace did in meeting just directly with Chinese ambassadors and Russian ambassadors. That's so one, we need to step our game up, continue to do the good work we do, but just step that up, but also directly meet with, those heads of states who do have the power to block whatever is going to be the next intervention in Haiti, UN-led or not, right?
Yeah, I would say support these institutions themselves, because Black Alliance for Peace, and we're talking about Black Alliance for Peace, Dr. Jemima Pierre leads the way on the Haiti file, so give her credit where credit is due. That's an Liberte, and there we're talking about Berthany Dupont and Kemai, that these two organizations and those individuals as leaders, that they're the ones who currently I think should be supported, because I don't actually think there is a functioning solidarity network right now. I don't think you can actually speak of one. I'll still see in interviews people mention the Canada-Haiti Action Network. It hasn't existed for a very long time, but it still pops up every once in a while as if it exists. Solidarité Haïti Quebec exists, and they do great work, but I'd say it's localized. But the work they do is fantastic. Aside from that, I couldn't say there's a functioning solidarity network. There's solidarity activists that are sometimes on their own, sometimes little collections, like a handful of people, and a lot of people who used to be on the Haiti file who have like a strong background, who's writing a work you can see around the 2004 coup and the post-coup period. But I wouldn't say there's an active solidarity network at this time. I hope there is one, and I definitely like to support it. But
well, I would love to be if I was living in Turtle Island, if I was living in the U.S. or yours truly Canada. I would love to be in like one of those meetings where Jean Sunville and Dr. Pierre educates Chinese, Russian ambassador or whatnot, with all of their wonderful knowledge that they do have on Haiti, and that would be great. But alrighty, but then before we close, we usually end the program. We usually end the program with the questionnaire done by Marcel Proust, later modernized by French broadcaster Bernard Pivot, and later adopted by my hero, the late, great James Lipton of Inside the Actors Studio. Travis, it's your turn to do this before we close, so here it goes. What is your favorite word?
What is my favorite word?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with it. Well, sorry, it's going to seem like a cheap one, but solidarity.
Not bad. So what's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. Complicated.
The word complicated. Okay.
Yep. Sorry, do I have to explain? I find the word.
No. That's well, actually, yeah, yes. Why is that your least favorite word?
I mean, it's the first one that came to mind. I haven't actually put too much thought into this, but I find it's often thrown out as a way to kind of end the discussion or accept some kind of like facile explanation for whatever it is, a situation or so on. It's complicated, so let's just either move on or it's complicated. So just accept my framing for what this for the situation. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. What sound or noise do you love?
But sorry, say that again.
What sound or noise do you love?
Well, that's an easy one now. Like the between being an elementary school teacher and my two boys, it's listening to them laugh and play.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And what sound or noise do you dislike then?
What sound do I dislike? That's a good one. A loud motor from a car.
All right, and then what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Emotionally, creative, or spirit? Like, honestly, collaboration. The having helped to edit this website for the better part of a decade now. There've been some periods where I feel like I'm kind of alone updating a blog. And there's other periods where I've really felt like I was part of a network, a community, and so on. And those times where I really feel like I'm networking and truly collaborating with other activists, those have been the most like spiritually kind of uplifting. The same kind of feeling I get when I'm taking part in like a big action on the street surrounded by thousands of other people, like-minded people. There's definitely a spiritual aspect to that that can't be mimicked or replaced. Something you only really get when you're really collaborating with people for a cause and for a good cause. Yeah.
And what turns you off then?
And what turns me off?
Yeah.
I'm mixing up my solidarity with my day job, but what turns me off is, I suppose, people who forget the, how do I put it? Forget the reason why they're there in the first place. So when it comes to Haiti solidarity, that they're there to build solidarity. When it comes to education, that they're there, for whether it's for the adults, the teenagers, the children, that they're there for them. They're the reason that they're there in the first place. Yeah.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Then what's your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word.
And seeing as you're based in Quebec, it can be it can be in other languages too.
Yeah, I've got like a switch in my brain. I've been working with kids like since I was like 16, so I can turn it on and off again. And despite having grown up in Quebec, the first thing out of my mouth when I'm frustrated is the F word. So I can't be original there. That's
all right.
The first thing that flies out. Yeah.
And then, what profession would you love to do if you weren't if you the great English math teachers that you do in elementary school? If you weren't doing all the wonderful Haiti solidarity work, what would you love to do?
I'm gonna cheat and give two answers for this, because there's certainly a part of me that would love to become like a full-time researcher and writer if I could actually support a family on the meager amount of money I'd be making off that. Because currently, just so it's clear, I don't get paid anything for any of the articles that are published in my work was published. But on the academic front, or on the other side, on the teacher side of my life, there's a chance that I'll kind of depart from teaching for a while, because I'm interested in how history is taught, particularly at the younger ages. I think there's a lot of work that could be done there in terms of like how to organize how history is taught to make it more engaging and to kind of develop a lifelong interest in learning about history, rather than what tends to happen these days, which is there's a lot of sort of, and this is not an accusation against teachers, they're doing their best, but the way history is often presented because of the programs that are enforced from governments is to kind of alienate people and make it as boring as possible, so that you just would rather tune out and watch something on TV,
Interesting.
That's an interesting
Interesting, very interesting answer. Then, what profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances?
Under any circumstances?
Yeah, what profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances?
I would never want to be a principal of a school. It's terrible. It's so hard. I don't know how they do it.
Love being the teacher, but definitely not the head honcho.
Yeah, a lot of respect for the principals who do their job well. Like my current principal, I really mean it. I don't understand how they do it. The kind of day-to-day connection to the students is part of what kind of gives me the energy to do my job, and there are other aspects as well. But in terms of like managing, being a part of a massive bureaucracy and managing all these different expectations and budgets and so on, no, that'll never be for me.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say as you arrive at the pearly gates, or whatever is your vision of the afterlife? And yes, if you are an atheist, you can still answer this question.
Yeah, I know I'm not one of those atheists that's upset by these questions.
Good.
The Hitchens kind of atheists who just Anyway, it's a whole other conversation. Hopefully, it'd be something like welcome to heaven, something along those lines. Hoping I'm living a good life, and that that would be welcome in a place like that where you're supposed to be virtuous and good in order to get in, right?
Yeah. Well, we were joined on this edition of 1+1, all things Haiti, all things Latin America, our all things Black people, diaspora, make me want to holler, with Travis Ross, a teacher based in Montreal, Quebec. Check out the brilliant website he co-edits, the Canada-Haiti Information Project, which also covers important related topics related to imperialism and Canada's real grotesque role in the world. Check out Travis's 3-part article at Haiti Liberte called How the U.S. and Canada Are Wooing Latin America and the Caribbean to Front for Their Plan to Invade Haiti. And I'm going to link to both of those and other important related articles, documentaries, and online web events at the pinned comments section at YouTube and show notes. Until then, Travis, thanks so much for coming on. Hope this will be the first of many conversations. Good luck to you in the Haiti Solidarity movement. Keep up the brilliant work, and hopefully that noble movement makes huge advancements this year in its quest to end imperialism in Haiti.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Likewise.